This is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast. This is VP. We are a solutions-based podcast, diving into the world of contrarian investing and alternative finance. You can find us hosted on the No Nonsense Forex YouTube channel, NoNonsenseForex.com, and podcast players everywhere. Episode 252 is brought to us by Blueberry Markets. We've talked about the DeFi side of things for the last few episodes. If you are looking for the exact opposite of that, something which is absolute full service from top to bottom, greatest customer service in the world, can trade directly off of your charts, whether it's MT4, MT5, TradingView, and a company which has grown to now have offices in 3 different countries, with customer service in over 20 different languages. Blueberry Markets is an easy choice. You have to go down to the Blueberry Markets blog to find my link, however, because the link is how you unlock all of this. The blog can be found down below in the show notes, and I don't have a clever little tagline that I've come up with for Blueberry Markets, but you guys know. Yeah, I've been with them for probably the better part of 6 years now, maybe 7. Almost no complaints in that time. Yeah, if you want to trade with a traditional broker, there is no better place to be. It is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast, Sunday edition. As always, we thank you for your patience. But there has been some developments going on that I don't believe most people are aware of, and we should talk about those today. Today's going to be a little bit more of a speculative episode overall, but the things that are happening are actually happening. And when the world is looking one way and things are happening in the other direction, well, we contrarians need to be aware of this, because the future implications here could be enormous. When it comes to things like gold and silver, for example, countries don't do what they do for no reason. Like, we saw the whole precursor to this when central banks started buying up all the gold they could in the early part of this decade. And then soon after, the least surprising thing ever happened. The price of gold and silver jumped to all-time highs. We are currently in the retracement phase, and I am very, very confident we are going to see another move up to new highs again. Primarily, this is certainly not the only reason, but one of the bigger reasons going on right now, as far as things that are not being reported for obvious reasons, is 2 of the largest economies in the world are now in official hoarding mode, meaning that gold and silver are no longer being allowed to leave the country. They will continue to import, but they will no longer be exporting. And those 2 countries are China and Russia. Now, when it came to silver, China has been doing this for a bit over a year now, but they're just now doing it with gold. You're thinking, wow, is gold just like so scarce in China? No, China's the number 1 producer of gold in the world. And as we know with China, they probably produce more than they report, because that's just how China is. Well, that's interesting, VP. Who's number 2, just out of curiosity? Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. Number 2 is Russia. So, as of May 1st, 2026, so 5 days from when this podcast episode is being recorded and broadcasted, Russia will join China in the complete disallowing of gold exports and silver as well. In terms of overall silver production, China is number 2. I think Russia is like number 6, 5 or 6 in that area. So you may as well just take all of that production and now completely take it offline. Like, it's more or less gone. Now, I feel like I'm starting to overuse this phrase a little bit, but it's safe to say that that's not nothing. This is quite significant. But how many of you were aware of this? Like, it's not even circulating around gold Twitter. Now, you can understand the hoarding of something like silver, but now why do it with gold? This is a bit more curious. With silver, we understand the industrial need. We understand that data centers are taking over the world. And we understand the role AI is going to have in our future. Not the exact role, but we know the significance of the role AI is going to play. And we know none of this can be done without silver. It's the most conductive metal on the planet. And the only, quote, substitute at this point is copper, which we are also invested heavily into here. And really, when people say it's a substitute, it's really, It's really kind of not. I mean, they're trying, but again, you're substituting silver with an equally, probably more scarce metal. Like we're just so far away from re-engineering a substitute here, and China and Russia have always understood this. Like the West has just caught on recently. But again, why gold? Well, if you're not paying attention, globalism is kind of dead now, and we're heading back towards mercantilism. Yet, what is not dead, and I heard somebody say this the other day, they think the BRICS is dead for some reason. You guys have to understand, I'm going to say this for probably the 18th time. Just because things are not in the news cycle currently does not mean they are no longer happening. I've already forgotten where I heard the quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but the quote goes, "The news cannot tell you how to think, but they can absolutely tell you what to think about." And so that's why I think episodes like this are so important, because the whole world is saying, hey, look at this thing over here, but please don't pay attention to this other thing over here. Not only is the BRICS, the whole idea of the BRICS, not dead, it has likely been accelerated by the war in Iran. The need for a BRICS currency has been magnified. And it's pretty safe to say, if you look at the countries in the BRICS, or at least the countries that make up the word BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, that China and Russia are going to be leading the dance here. Brazil and South Africa are still basket cases, really, and India just doesn't have the pull and sway that China and Russia do. And we also know, my Substack readers will know this. By the way, I do have a Substack. Link is also in the show notes. I wrote a blog post called Hold Up, Wait a Minute that show that they have already done a test run for a BRICS currency on the blockchain. And in that mix of things they will use, gold makes up a pretty significant portion. So they are already seriously planning on using gold as a strong portion of their method of settlement here. And if you haven't read that blog post, wait till you see which blockchain they were using. That's the big reveal at the end, really. But I've been talking about this since I started my YouTube channel. I strongly think there is going to be a need for a complete currency reset. It's really going to be the only way you completely detach yourself from the United States dollar, which these countries want to do more than anything else in the world. And the best way to do that, really, the biggest FU to the U.S. and the USD, is going to be to tie your currency to gold. We saw what going off of the gold standard did for the United States dollar, and how strong it would have been and how strong it would have remained had we had not done that. So imagine if you could just undo all that, but with a different currency or two. Again, when countries start hoarding gold or buying up a bunch of it, they don't do it for no reason. Something is happening here. Something is about to happen here. And really what this means for contrarians like us is there is no doubt in anybody's mind that when something like this finally does take hold, or finally does complete, or even just the rumor of it happening, that is going to be incredible for the price of gold and a gigantic benefit for gold holders like us. I think everybody here can agree that no matter how much gold you have, you simply don't have enough, and you would like to have a lot more. As the saying goes, you're just not bullish enough. Like, do you really think these countries are doing what they're doing because they think the price of gold is going to tank? Or because gold is going to become less and less relevant somehow? Absolutely not. I mean, how coveted would your currency be? Because right now the yuan and the ruble are not really coveted by anybody. The only reason other countries even use yuan is because China forces them to. But what if every yuan and ruble denominated note turned into transferable units of gold? Again, contrarians, this is not nothing. It just seems that way because almost nobody is aware that it's happening. But now you do. So we have talked on this podcast before anybody was even really reporting it as a thing. Like, it's kind of obvious now, but we were saying it way before it was obvious that the Trump administration is trying to lock down the Western Hemisphere and bring it into the United States' sphere of influence. And you see all the pieces being put in place. Venezuela was part of that. Cuba will be part of that. Do not be surprised if Brazil and Peru become stories very soon. Argentina has been brought in. And even what's going on in Iran is, believe it or not, a piece of this overall puzzle. So regardless of your feelings on this matter, what is actually happening is the world is becoming very bifurcated between the Eastern and Western hemispheres. If this whole thing completes, the West will end up pretty much doing their own thing, and the East will end up doing their own thing. And that's why you're seeing everything happen the way it is now. And these two halves are going to have to figure out their own currencies and how this is going to work. Now, this brings up an even more interesting topic. So if we look at gold's dominance in the Eastern Hemisphere, I'm giving away the answer to this question already. But if you look at the top 10 countries, percentage-wise, where citizens hold the most gold, tell me what all of these top 10 countries have in common. So by rank: India, China, Turkey, Thailand, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Germany, Switzerland, Iran. Again, these are the top 10 countries, percentage-wise, where citizens hold the most gold. All 10 of those countries are in the Eastern Hemisphere. Gold is just their thing. It's always been their thing. So it only makes sense for it to play a large part in the future of the Eastern Hemisphere. So while we're playing theory craft here, let's what will the West do? The West is pretty far behind in this whole gold race. What will they do? Obviously the USD is going to play a part, but it can't hold a candle to gold, and it's going to keep losing ground to gold. And this is only going to make the Eastern Hemisphere stronger. The U.S. isn't going to be okay with that. So how does the United States counter something like this? Any ideas? I got one. Now, volatility is going to have to settle down a little bit, and it will not be a complete replacement for the United States dollar, despite what the champions of this particular instrument think. However, did you know that the United States and United States corporations, the combination of the citizens, the government, and corporations, own, and you can't really put a hard number on this, but own right about close to a quarter of all of the Bitcoin ever mined. And there's only about another million to go out of 21 million. I've spoken before about the United States' dominance in what could be the future of money is probably a bit unsettling and might actually work against the whole idea of global adoption for Bitcoin. I mean, if you're China, does this proposition even interest you? Like you have so much gold and you're only accumulating more and more. Like that's power. That is you. If you do this right and you implement gold as the currency of the Eastern Hemisphere, that is nothing but you increasing your dominance more and more and more. China can't really do that with Bitcoin because the United States at this point just has too much of it. So why bother? Just say, screw Bitcoin, we'll deal in gold. And it's pretty obvious that's what they're doing. To where the United States would look and say, okay, we're probably not going to win the gold race here. Just like how China feels with Bitcoin, that race is pretty much determined, and we're not going to be able to catch up. But where do we dominate? What do we have an abnormal amount of dominance in? Well, that's going to be Bitcoin. And that is something they can certainly use. Now, how does this whole thing get implemented? I have no idea. But I'm sure you guys probably have some opinions on this. So if you would, this podcast does go to YouTube, as well as the Spotifys and Apples of the world, which is where most of you are listening. But if you'd be so kind, you want to go to YouTube and sound off on this matter, please do. I think the future of currency and global trade is a fascinating subject. It is absolutely in our benefit to front run something like this, especially when the signs are as obvious as they are. Like, this should be one of the main things we're talking about. And so I really like episodes like this because the things which we are already accumulating, you guys know, I have half of my entire net worth in gold and Bitcoin. It really does kind of verify and justify our collective ethos here. So I'd really like to hear what you guys have to say about this. But we'll go ahead and leave it there for this week. And at this point, I can't believe anybody would think that accumulating things like gold and Bitcoin is even remotely crazy at this stage, especially when you consider how the largest and most powerful countries in the world are doing the exact same thing. But if they want to call us crazy, that's fine. I guess we are crazy. But what matters is we're also early.